The cold stone floor pressed against Nari Park's bare knees as she crawled forward. Each movement sent sharp pain through her legs. The obsidian surface was polished smooth like black glass, but tiny rough edges bit into her skin. Blood left. Small red dots behind her as she moved across the vast throne room. Above her, alien voices whispered and laughed. The sounds were not like human laughter. They came from deep throats and ended in clicking noises that made her skin crawl. Ari kept her eyes down, staring at the dark floor that reflected the strange lights hanging from the ceiling high above. The throne room was enormous. It could have held 1,000 people easily. The walls stretched up so high that shadows hid the top. Purple and green lights floated in the air without any visible support. They cast weird colors on everything, making the whole room feel like being inside some terrible dream. Vexstar sat on his throne at the far end of the room. He was the largest alien Nari had ever seen. His body was like a giant lizard that had learned to stand on 2 legs. His scales were dark, purple and black, and they seemed to move and shift in the strange light. When he breathed, his chest rose and fell like a great bellows. His eyes were yellow with black slits down the middle, and they never looked away from her. "Crawl faster," human Vexstar's voice boomed across the room. He spoke in the universal language that all spacefaring species used for trade and diplomacy. His accent made every word sound harsh and cruel. "My guests grow bored, watching you move so slowly." Around the edges of the great room, other aliens sat on smaller chairs and platforms. They came from different worlds and looked nothing like each other. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had too many eyes or no eyes at all. A few looked almost human except for strange skin colors or extra limbs. But they all watched Nari with the same expression. They thought she was entertainment now. I forced herself to move faster. Her arms shook with exhaustion. She had been crawling for what felt like hours, but she had only crossed half the distance to the throne. The aliens had taken her clothes. When they dragged her from her cell, they said clothes were for people, not for animals. They said humans were just smart animals that had learned to use tools. Behind her, along the walls, other humans stood in chains. There were maybe 50 of them. Men and women from the outer colony ships that had been captured in the last battle. Their heads were down and their shoulders slumped. Some were crying quietly, others just stared at nothing with empty eyes. Nari had known some of them before the capture. There was Sunho from the mining ship Bright Dawn. He used to tell funny stories during the long shifts. He looked like he had forgotten how to smile. Near him stood Haijin, who had been a teacher on the colony ship New Hope. Her hair was dirty and tangled, and her hands shook, even though she was not cold. "Look at this creature," Vexstar continued, his voice filling every corner of the room. He gestured with one clawed hand toward Nari. "This is what humans call a warrior. This female fought against our forces in the Kepler system. She destroyed 2 of our patrol ships with clever tricks and desperate courage." The alien audience made more of their clicking laughter sounds. Some of them leaned forward in their seats to get a better look at her. "But look at her now," Vexstar said, "crawling naked across my floor like the animal she truly is. This is the reality of humanity. They may build ships and use weapons, but they are still just beasts that learn to walk upright." Nari's face burned with shame and anger. She wanted to stand up and scream at him. She wanted to tell him about human art and music and poetry. She wanted to describe the beautiful gardens on Earth and the way children laughed in the schoolyards. She wanted to explain that humans had love and hope and dreams that reached for the stars. But her voice was gone. They had done something to her throat during interrogation. She could only make small, croaking sounds, so she crawled forward in silence, letting her anger burn inside her chest like a small fire. The distance to the throne seemed to grow longer with each movement. The room was designed to make visitors feel small and helpless. Everything about it was meant to show Vexstar power and importance. The high ceiling, the floating lights, the throne that sat on a platform 20 steps above the floor. It all said the same thing. You are nothing. I am everything. In the old days, before humans learned to leave their little planet, we thought they might have potential. Vexstar continued his speech. Some of our scholars believe these creatures could become useful servants. They are good with their hands, and they breed quickly. But the war has shown us the truth." He stood up from his throne, his massive form casting a long shadow across the room. When he moved, his scales made soft scraping sounds against each other. He walked down the steps slowly, each footfall echoing like thunder. Humans are stubborn and violent. They cannot accept their proper place in the galaxy. They think they deserve the same respect as truly intelligent species. This one, he pointed at Nari again. This one actually believed she could defeat us. Nari was 3/4 of the way across the room now. Her knees left steady red smears on the black stone. Her whole body ached, but she kept moving. The watching humans behind her had not made a sound during her whole journey. She could feel their eyes on her back. Some of them had been soldiers. Like her, others had just been colonists trying to make new lives on distant worlds. None of them deserved this. Vexstar reached the bottom of the steps and walked toward her. Each of his steps was longer than 3 of hers. He would reach her long before she reached the throne. "When she arrives at my feet," he announced to his guests, "I will show you how we will solve the human problem forever. No more wars, no more resistance. Just proper submission to those who are truly meant to rule among the stars." The alien audience made approving sounds. Some of them clapped with hands or tentacles or whatever limbs they used for showing appreciation. Nari kept crawling forward. The fire inside her chest grew hotter with each word Vexstar spoke. Whatever he planned to do to her, she would face it with her head up. She was human. That still meant something, even here. Vexstar stopped walking toward Nari when he was only 10 steps away from her. His yellow eyes gleamed with cruel pleasure as he looked down at the bleeding human woman. She had almost reached the base of his throne platform, leaving a trail of red drops on the black stone behind her. "Now comes the final lesson," Vexstar announced to his audience. His voice echoed through the vast throne room like rolling thunder. "I will demonstrate why humans can never be equal to superior species." He reached into the folds of his ceremonial robe and pulled out a long metal rod. It was thin and silver, about the length of his arm. Strange symbols were carved along its surface, and they glowed with pale blue light. When he held it up, the air around it seemed to shimmer like heat waves. The watching aliens leaned forward in their seats. Some of them made excited clicking sounds. Others whispered to each other in languages Nari could not understand. She had seen weapons, like the one Vexstar held before. They were called pain sticks. It could cause agony without leaving permanent damage. The aliens liked to use them for torture and punishment. Nari stopped crawling and looked up at Vexstar. Her dark eyes met his yellow ones without fear. If this was how she died, she would face it like a human being. "You will crawl to my feet," Vexstar said, pointing the pain stick at her. "Then you will kiss my claws and thank me for showing mercy to your pathetic species." Before Nari could respond, a deep sound filled the throne room. It was like the hum of massive machinery starting up. The great doors at the entrance to the chamber began to slide open. They were enormous doors, each one 20 feet tall and 10 feet wide. They moved slowly, grinding against stone tracks that had been carved into the floor centuries ago. Vexstar turned toward the doors with annoyance on his scaled face. "I gave orders that we were not to be disturbed," he snarled at his guards. The alien guards near the entrance looked confused. They pressed buttons on their control devices and spoke into communication units, but the doors continued opening. Bright white light spilled in from the corridor beyond, cutting through the purple and green glow of the throne room. A figure appeared in the doorway. It was a human man, walking slowly and calmly into the chamber. He was not very tall, maybe average height for a human. His black hair was neat and short. He wore simple dark pants and a white shirt. Over the shirt, he had on a brown leather jacket that looked old and worn, but well cared for. The man walked into the throne room like he was entering a library or a museum. His hands were in his jacket pockets, and he looked around with mild interest, as if he was seeing something moderately curious, but not particularly surprising. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence that had fallen over the room. The alien guards moved to stop him, raising their energy weapons. But the man looked at them and raised one hand slightly, palm outward. It was a small gesture, barely noticeable, but the guards froze in place. Their weapons stayed pointed at him, but they could not seem to pull the triggers. Other guards started moving toward the intruder, but they slowed down as they got closer, as if they were walking through thick mud. Some of them stopped completely, looking confused and frustrated. The human continued walking across the throne room floor. He moved at a steady, unhurried pace, his eyes scanning the assembled aliens with calm attention. When he saw the chained, human prisoners along the walls, his expression softened slightly with what might have been sadness. But he did not stop walking. Vexstar stared at the approaching human with growing amazement and rage. "What is the meaning of this?" he roared. "Guards, kill this creature immediately." More aliens tried to attack the walking man. Some fired energy weapons at him. The bright beams struck his jacket and simply disappeared, like water soaking into cloth. Others tried to use psychic attacks, the kind that could paralyze human minds or fill them with terror. The man kept walking as if nothing was happening. Alien audience began to murmur and whisper among themselves. This was not normal. Humans were supposed to be weak and helpless. Their technology was inferior. Their minds were easily controlled. Yet this one human was walking through their defenses like they did not exist. The man reached the spot where Nari knelt on the bloody floor. He stopped directly in front of her and looked down with kind eyes. Without saying anything, he took off his brown leather jacket. It was clearly old, with worn spots on the elbows and small scratches on the leather. But it looked warm and comfortable, like something that had been treasured for many years. He knelt down beside Nari and gently placed the jacket around her shoulders. The leather was soft and warm against her skin. It smelled like soap and coffee and something else she could not identify. Something that reminded her of home. "I believe there has been a misunderstanding," the man said. His voice was calm and polite, like someone correcting a small mistake in a business meeting. He spoke in perfect universal language, but his accent was clearly human. Vexstar's mouth opened and closed several times before he could speak. What are you?" he finally managed to say. The man stood up slowly and brushed dust off his knees. He looked at Vexstar with the same calm attention he had given everything else in the room. "My name is Jiho Kim," he said. "I represent the Terran Diplomatic Corps. I am here to discuss the terms of this woman's release." He spoke as if Nari's freedom was already decided, as if the only question was working out the details of how it would happen. The alien elite's yellow eyes grew, wide with disbelief. "Release," he sputtered. "This human is my prisoner. She is a war criminal who destroyed our ships." Jiho nodded politely. "I understand there may have been some confusion about recent events," he said. "That is why I am here, to clear things up." Nari pulled the jacket tighter around herself and looked up at this strange human who had walked calmly into hell to find her. For the first time in weeks, she felt something she had almost forgotten. She felt hope. Vexstar raised the pain stick higher, pointing it directly at Jiho's chest. The blue symbols along its length glowed brighter, and the air around it shimmered with dangerous energy. "You dare come into my throne room and make demands?" he roared. "I will show you what happens to humans who forget their place." Jiho looked at the weapon with mild curiosity, like someone examining an interesting but harmless insect. He tilted his head slightly to one side. "That is a Neural Disruptor Model 7. Manufactured on the Korvax homeworld approximately 15 years ago," he said, in the same calm voice. "It works by sending electromagnetic pulses through the nervous system. Quite painful for most organic beings." The alien elite's scaled face twisted with rage. "Then you know what it will do to you." "Actually, I do not think it will work at all," Jiho replied politely. He reached into his pants pocket and pulled out a small device about the size of a human hand. It was smooth and silver, with no visible buttons or controls. "You see, we have made some improvements recently." Vexstar triggered the pain stick. A brilliant blue beam shot out, striking Jiho in the center of his chest. The energy should have dropped him to the ground, screaming in agony. Instead, the beam seemed to bend around him, flowing past his body like water around a stone. "Excess energy, crackled harmlessly into the floor. The watching aliens made sounds of surprise and confusion. Some of them stood up from their seats. Others backed away, as if Jiho might suddenly become dangerous. "How is this possible?" Vextar demanded. He fired the pain stick again, then again. Each time the energy simply flowed around Jiho without touching him. Jiho tucked the silver device back into his pocket. "We have been studying your technology for some time now," he explained. "It is quite clever, but it has some obvious weaknesses once you understand how it works." Behind Jiho, Nari struggled to her feet, but the leather jacket hung down to her knees, covering her like a protective shield. She could feel something strange about it, a subtle tingling that seemed to push away the cold and fear that had filled her for so many days. "This is impossible," one of the alien guests called out from his seat. It was a tall, thin creature with gray skin and forearms. "Humans do not have this kind of technology. We have studied their capabilities. They are centuries behind us." Jiho turned to look at the speaker with genuine interest. "You are Counselor Quindel from the Hegemony Science Division, are you not?" he said. "I read your report about human technological development. It was quite thorough, though I am afraid your information is somewhat out of date." Quindel's forearms trembled slightly. "That report is classified. How could you possibly?" "Intercepted your communications about 6 months ago," Jiho said cheerfully. "Your encryption methods are really very good, but once we understood the mathematical principles behind them, they became quite easy to break." Vextar threw the useless pain stick to the floor where it clattered across the black stone. "Lies," he shouted. "Human minds are weak. We cannot resist our psychic controls." Jiho nodded thoughtfully. "That used to be true," he agreed. "Your people have natural telepathic abilities that most humans lack. For a long time, that gave you a significant advantage. But we are very good at solving problems when we put our minds to it." He touched the side of his head just behind his ear. A small metallic disc became visible there, no bigger than a coin. "Psychic dampener," he explained. "Every human diplomat now carries one. They are quite effective." The throne room had become very quiet. Even the whispers from the alien audience had stopped. Everyone was staring at this one human who seemed completely unaffected by weapons that should have killed him and mental attacks that should have driven him insane. Nari found her voice for the first time in weeks. It came out as a harsh whisper, damaged by whatever the aliens had done to her throat. "How?" she managed to ask. Jiho turned to her with a kind smile. "After the attacks on the outer colonies began, Earth started the emergency research project," he said. "Every scientist, engineer, and inventor on the planet began working together. We studied every piece of alien technology we could find. We analyzed the biology of captured alien soldiers. We learned," he gestured toward his jacket, which Nari still wore. "That jacket contains fibers made from processed alien neural tissue," he continued. "They create a field that disrupts most forms of energy weapons and psychic attacks. It's very useful for diplomatic missions." Vextar's yellow eyes widened with horror. You used our own biology against us? You learned from it?" Jiho corrected gently. "Just as you learned from studying humans when you first encountered us. The difference is that we did not stop learning." A new sound began to echo through the throne room. It was a deep humming, like the engines of a very large ship. The floating lights in the ceiling flickered. The floor began to vibrate slightly under everyone's feet. Jiho pulled a small communication device from his pocket and spoke into it. "Captain Choi, are you in position?" A man's voice answered, clearly loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. "All ships are ready, Ambassador Kim. We have the station surrounded." The alien guests began to panic. Some of them ran toward the exits. Others pressed emergency buttons on their personal communicators, calling for help. But their messages seemed to be going nowhere. Their devices showed connection errors and system failures. Vextar stared at Jiho with growing fear and rage. "Is impossible. Our sensors show no ships. Our defenses have detected no threats." Jiho put the communicator away and smiled. "Ah yes, stealth technology," he said casually. "Another recent development. We borrowed some ideas from the Korvax military database. Very clever people, the Korvax, though their security systems need work. Behind them, the chained human prisoners were beginning to stand up straighter. Hope was spreading across their faces like sunlight breaking through clouds. Sunho, the former miner, was actually smiling. Hyjin, the teacher, had tears in her eyes, but they were good tears. "What do you want?" Vexter asked, his voice much quieter now. Jiho clasped his hands behind his back and looked around the throne room one more time. "What to discuss the terms of peace," he said simply. "An immediate release of all human prisoners, of course." Vexter's scaled hands clenched into fists at his sides. The alien elite was not used to being told what to do, especially not by a human. His yellow eyes blazed with fury as he looked at Jiho, standing calmly in the middle of his throne room. "Think one human with clever toys can threaten the might of the galactic hegemony?" Vextar snarled. He turned to his guards and officers around the room. "Kill him, kill them both. I do not care what technology they have." A dozen alien guards rushed forward at once. They came from different species and carried different weapons. Some had energy rifles that could burn through steel. Others carried sonic disruptors that could shatter bones with sound waves. A few wielded gravity hammers that could crush a human body with pure force. Jiho stood perfectly still as they approached. He did not reach for any weapons or try to run away, simply watched them come with the same calm expression he had worn since. Entering the room, the first guard to reach him fired an energy rifle at point-blank range. The bright red beam should have burned a hole through Jiho's chest. Instead, it struck his jacket and scattered into dozens of smaller beams that flew harmlessly in all directions. Some of the scattered energy hit the ceiling, leaving black scorch marks on the ancient stone. The second guard swung a gravity hammer at Jiho's head. The weapon was designed to create a localized field of crushing force. But when it got within 3 feet of Jiho, the hammer suddenly became too heavy for the guard to lift. The alien struggled and strained, but the weapon would not move any closer. 2 more guards tried sonic disruptors. The weapons made terrible screaming sounds that should have shattered every bone in Jiho's body. Instead, the sound waves bent around him like light bending around a lens. The noise bounced back at the guards themselves, knocking them to the ground with their own weapons. Within seconds, all 12 guards were either unconscious on the floor or backing away in terror. Their most powerful weapons had been turned against them or simply stopped working. Jiho had not moved from his spot or even raised his hands to defend himself. "Interesting," Jiho said, looking down at one of the fallen guards. "Your gravity hammer technology is more advanced than we expected. We'll have to study that design more carefully." Nari watched from behind him, still wrapped in his protective jacket. She had seen human technology before, but nothing like this. Felt warm against her skin, and she could sense energy moving through its fibers like blood through veins. Whatever the humans had learned during their months of research, it was far beyond anything the aliens had expected. Vexter backed up several steps, his confidence cracking for the first time. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Our weapons are the finest in the galaxy. Our technology has conquered 1,000 worlds." Ho reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the small silver device again. This time, he pointed it toward the control panel near Vextar's throne. The panel controlled the lighting, gravity, and communication systems for the entire throne room. "May I demonstrate something?" Jiho asked politely. Without waiting for an answer, he pressed his thumb against the smooth surface of the device. Immediately, the alien control panel began flashing with error messages. The purple and green lights floating in the air flickered and changed colors. Some of them turned bright white, while others became deep red. The gravity in the room shifted. Slightly, some of the alien guests found themselves floating a few inches off their seats. Others felt themselves pressed down harder against the floor. The effect lasted only a few seconds before returning to normal, but it was enough to show everyone what was happening. "We learned how to interface with your computer systems about 4 months ago," Jiho explained. "Once we understood your programming languages, it became quite simple to take control of most hegemony technology." He pressed the device again, and all the communication panels in the room began displaying messages in human writing. The words scrolled by too fast to read, but everyone could see that the station's computer systems were no longer under alien control. "Stop!" Vexstar shouted. You are destroying everything. Oh no, Jiho said with genuine concern. I would never destroy anything unnecessarily. I am simply showing you that we can control your systems if we need to. Watch. He touched the device. Once more, and all the alien technology in the room returned to normal. The lights went back to their original colors. The gravity stabilized. The communication panels showed their usual displays. But everyone had seen the demonstration. The humans could take control whenever they wanted to. Captain Minho Choi's. The voice came through the communication system again, clearer than before. Ambassador Kim. We are receiving surrender requests from 17 hegemony vessels in this system. Should we accept them? Jiho lifted his communicator. Tell them we accept. Their surrender, but they must power down all weapons systems and prepare for inspection teams. Understood, Ambassador. Vexstar stared at Jiho with growing horror. 17 ships, he whispered. But our fleet has 20 ships in this system. What happened to the other 3? They chose to fight instead of surrender, Jiho said sadly. We disabled their weapons and engines, but no one was seriously hurt. Your crews are being transferred to medical facilities on our ships. The alien elite's legs seemed to give out beneath him. He sat down heavily on the steps leading up to his throne, his massive head in his hands. How? He asked. How did you learn so much so quickly? Jiho walked closer to Vexstar, his footsteps echoing in the quiet room. You made one mistake, he said gently. You thought that defeating our outer colonies meant you had defeated humanity. But Earth has 4 billion people. When you attacked our colonies, you gave every single one of those people a reason to work together. He gestured toward the chained human prisoners along the walls. Every one of these people has family on Earth, friends, loved ones. When you took them prisoner, you made 4 billion humans very angry. And humans are quite good at solving problems. When we are motivated, Nari stood up slowly, still wearing Jiho's jacket like armor. Her voice was getting stronger. How many ships? She asked. Jiho smiled at her. In this system, about 200. In the galaxy as a whole? He paused thoughtfully. Well, that would be telling. Around the room, alien guests were quietly trying to leave, but the doors had sealed themselves shut. The human fleet was not letting anyone go anywhere until negotiations were finished. 2 hours later, they sat in the station's main conference room. The change from the throne room was dramatic. Here, there were no floating lights or towering ceilings designed to make visitors feel small. Instead, there was a simple oval table. With chairs around it, bright white lights came from panels in the ceiling, making everything clear and easy to see. Jiho sat at one end of the table with Nari beside him. She still wore his leather jacket, though someone had brought her simple, gray clothes to wear underneath. Her voice was getting stronger each hour, and the terrible damage to her throat was beginning to heal. Across from them sat Vexstar and 5 other high-ranking aliens from different species. The alien elite looked much smaller now, away from his throne and ceremonial robes. He wore a simple, dark uniform like a military officer. His yellow eyes kept moving around the room as if he expected human soldiers to appear at any moment. The other aliens looked just as nervous. Let us begin with the basic terms, Jiho said, opening a thin electronic tablet. First, all human prisoners in hegemony territory will be released immediately. This includes not just the people on this station, but everyone captured during the recent conflicts. Counselor Quindel, the gray-skinned alien with 4 arms, leaned forward in his chair. That is more than 3,000 people spread across dozens of systems, he said. Some of them are war criminals who destroyed our ships and killed our soldiers. Jiho looked at him with calm patience. From our perspective, they were defending their homes against an unprovoked invasion. But I understand you see things differently. That is why we are here to talk instead of simply taking them by force. Vexstar's scaled hands gripped the edge of the table. You speak as if you could actually do such a thing, he growled. The hegemony has millions of ships and trillions of soldiers. Yes, Jiho agreed politely. You do have impressive numbers. But numbers alone do not win wars, as recent events have shown.
Captain Minho Choi's voice came through the communication system built into the table. Ambassador Kim, I have an update from Earth Command.
Admiral Dayon Lee reports that Operation Starlight has been completed successfully. Giho touched a button on his tablet. Thank you, Captain. Please share the details with our guests here. The table's surface lit up with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of tiny lights showed the locations of different star systems. Many of them were colored red, indicating hegemony territory. Others were blue for human space. But as they watched, dozens of red lights began changing to yellow. What does the yellow mean? Asked another alien at the table. This one looked almost human, except for silver skin and completely black eyes. Yellow indicates systems where hegemony forces have surrendered to human fleets in the past 6 hours, Giho explained. Admiral Lee has been quite busy while we have been talking. More lights kept changing from red to yellow. Within minutes, entire sectors of hegemony space were showing surrender markers. The aliens around the table watched in growing horror as their empires seemed to crumble before their eyes. This is impossible, Vexstar whispered. You cannot have defeated our entire military in one day. We did not defeat them, Giho corrected. We simply showed them what would happen if they continued fighting. Most of your commanders are quite intelligent. They chose surrender over destruction. Nari spoke for the first time since entering the conference room. Her voice was still rough, but it was getting clearer. How many humans died today? She asked. Giho checked his tablet. 47, injured, mostly minor wounds. No deaths. He looked up at the stunned aliens. We really do prefer to solve problems without violence when possible, the alien with silver skin leaned back in his chair. Out, he asked simply. We spent the last 8 months studying everything we captured from your forces, Giho explained. Your technology, your tactics, your psychology. We learned that most hegemony species are actually quite reasonable when they are not being threatened or manipulated by fear. He touched his tablet again, and the galaxy map zoomed in on specific systems. We sent small diplomatic ships to each major hegemony fleet. These ships carried no weapons, only communication equipment and proof of our new capabilities. We offered each commander a simple choice: surrender and be treated with dignity, or fight and be defeated. What proof did you show them? Quindel asked, his forearms trembling slightly. We demonstrated our ability to disable their weapons and take control of their computer systems, just as I did here, Giho said. We also showed them recordings of what happened to the 3 ships that chose to fight in this system. Their crews are safe and well cared for, but their ships are now completely under our control. Vexstar buried his face in his hands. You have destroyed everything we built over centuries. No, Giho said gently. We have simply changed the rules. The hegemony can continue to exist, but it cannot continue to conquer and enslave other species. Those days are over. Nuri pulled the leather jacket tighter around her shoulders. What happens to the prisoners you mentioned? The humans in hegemony space? They are already being freed, Giho replied. Human rescue ships are arriving at prison facilities throughout the galaxy. Within 24 hours, every human captive will be on their way home. The aliens around the table looked at each other. With expressions of defeat and confusion, their entire worldview had changed in a single day. The species they had considered primitive and weak had somehow become the dominant power in the galaxy overnight. What do you want from us? Silver-skinned alien asked. Giho closed his tablet and leaned back in his chair. We want to build a new kind of galaxy, he said. One where different species work together instead of conquering each other. One where no one has to crawl across throne room floors to entertain cruel masters. He looked directly at Vexstar. You can be part of that future, or you can be left behind by it. The choice is yours. Outside the conference room windows, human ships could be seen docking with the station. Rescue teams were already moving through the corridors, freeing prisoners, and providing medical care. The galaxy was changing, one system at a time. 3 days later, Nari walked beside Giho through the corridors of the station toward the docking bay. She still wore his leather jacket, but now she also had proper clothes underneath and boots that fit her feet. Her hair was clean, and her wounds had been treated by human medical teams. The terrible damage to her voice was almost completely healed. The station felt completely different now. Where once there had been alien guards with weapons and chains, now there were human and alien workers cooperating on repairs and improvements. The harsh purple lighting had been replaced with warm, white lights that made everything look more friendly and welcoming. They passed groups of former human prisoners, walking freely through the halls. Sunho, the miner from the bright dawn, was helping a team of engineers fix damaged power systems. Jean, the teacher, was working with alien children who had been separated from their families during the fighting. Everyone looked healthier and happier than they had just a few days ago. The prisoner ships will be ready to leave within the hour, Jiho said, checking his tablet as they walked. Captain Choi has arranged escort vessels to make sure everyone gets home safely.
Ari nodded.
But she seemed thoughtful rather than excited. What about you? She asked. Are you going back to Earth too? Jiho smiled. Not yet. There's still much work to do here. We need to help establish the new government structure and make sure the transition goes smoothly. Admiral Lee estimates it will take at least 6 months to set up proper diplomatic relations with all the former hegemony worlds. They entered the main docking bay, which was enormous enough to hold dozens of ships at once. Human vessels filled most of the space now, were sleek silver holes marked with the blue and white symbols of Earth. But there were also alien ships from species that had chosen to work with the humans rather than against them. Near the center of the bay, Vexstar stood with several other former hegemony leaders. They were not prisoners, but they were clearly uncertain about their place in this new galaxy. The alien elite looked smaller somehow, as if losing his power had made him physically shrink. When he saw Jiho and Nari approaching, Vexstar straightened his shoulders and walked over to meet them. His yellow eyes no longer held the cruel arrogance they had shown in the throne room. Instead, they showed something that might have been respect, or perhaps fear. Ambassador Kim Vexstar said formally, I wanted to speak with you before the prisoner ships depart. Jiho stopped walking and gave the alien his full attention. Of course. What did you want to discuss? Dexstar looked at Nari for a long moment. She met his gaze steadily. No longer the broken, crawling figure he had humiliated in his throne room. I wanted to apologize, he said finally. What I did to you and to your people was wrong. I let my anger and fear turn me into something cruel. Uri considered his words carefully before responding. You were raised in a system that taught you to see other species as inferior, she said. That does not excuse what you did, but I understand why you believed it was right. What will happen to me now? Vexstar asked. To all of us who served the old hegemony? Jiho clasped his hands behind his back. A gesture Nari had learned meant he was thinking carefully about his answer. That depends on what you choose to do. Next, he said, some of your former colleagues have already agreed to help build the new Galactic Council. Others have decided to return to their homeworlds and focus on improving life for their own people. And if I choose to oppose these changes? Vexstar asked.
Us.
Then you will be left behind while the rest of the galaxy moves forward. Jiho replied simply. We will not force you to join us, but we will not allow you to return to the old ways of conquest and slavery. A young human woman in a blue uniform approached their group. Nari recognized her as Daeon Lee, the brilliant engineer who had helped develop the technology that made their victory possible. She carried a tablet and looked excited about something. Ambassador Kim Daeon said. I have the final reports from the integration teams. 73% of former hegemony worlds have voted to join the new Galactic Cooperation Council. Another 18% are requesting observer status while they decide. And the remaining 9%? Jiho asked. They want to be left alone completely, Daeon replied. No interference, no contact, no cooperation. We have agreed to honor those wishes as long as they do not threaten other worlds. Jiho nodded approvingly. Excellent work. Admiral Lee, please send those reports to Earth Command and begin preparing for the first council meeting. As Daeon walked away, Captain Minho Choi's voice came over the station's communication system. All passengers for the prisoner transport ships, please report to docking bays 7 through 12. Departure will begin in 30 minutes around the bay. Former human prisoners began gathering their few belongings and saying goodbye to the alien friends they had made during their time on the station. Many of the aliens looked sad to see them go. Relationships had formed between captors and captives that went beyond the simple dynamics of the old system. Nari looked down at the leather jacket she still wore. It had become more than just clothing. To her, it represented the moment when someone had cared enough to cover her nakedness and restore her dignity. It was the symbol of humanity's refusal to accept defeat, even in the darkest circumstances. "I should give this back to you," she said, starting to take off the jacket. Jiho held up a hand to stop her. "Please keep it," he said. "I have others, and I think it suits you better than it ever suited me." She pulled the jacket closer around her shoulders. "What will you do when all this is finished? When the new galaxy is stable and peaceful?" Jiho looked out through the bay's large windows at the stars beyond. Human and alien ships moved back and forth between systems, carrying diplomats and engineers and teachers instead of soldiers and weapons. The galaxy was already beginning to change. "I think I will go home to Earth for a while," he said. "Visit my family, walk in the gardens, remember what we were fighting to protect, and probably come back out here to help with whatever new challenges we discover. And if some species decides to try conquest again, someone else builds an empire, like the hegemony." Jiho smiled, and for the first time since Nari had met him, his expression was not entirely gentle. "Then we will remind them why that is no longer possible," he said quietly. "Humans are very good at learning from our experiences. We do not forget lessons that cost us so much to learn." The boarding call sounded again, and Nari knew it was time to go. She hugged Jiho goodbye, feeling the same sense of safety and strength that his jacket had given her in the throne room, as she walked toward the transport ship that would take her home. Nari looked back once at the station that had been her prison and was now becoming a symbol of the new galaxy. Humans and aliens worked together in the corridors, building something better than what had come before. The stars were the same as they had always been, but the galaxy itself had changed forever. At the heart of that change was a simple truth that humanity had never forgotten. Even in their darkest hour, every person deserved to stand with dignity among the stars.